What's up guys, it's Stefan here from Pokemaniac, here today to give you 10 facts about Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. Now before I start, this list is in no particular order. All links will be in the description box below. If you like what you see, drop a like or give us a comment. Number 10. Mew's Mystery. When Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow were first released, there were more conspiracy theories surrounding the capture of legendary creature Mew than there were concerning Area 51. Completing the Pokedex, defeating the Elite Four more than 100 times, and moving that mysterious truck in Viridian City were all interesting schoolyard theories back in the day. But as we have come to realize in recent years, these rumors were all disappointingly false. It appeared that without cheating, the only way to obtain the fabled creature was through a Nintendo event. Luckily enough for fans of the original legendary Pokemon, obsessive gamers have, in fact, discovered a way to legitimately capture the incredibly rare character Mew. It is a bit of an arduous process that we won't fully cover here, but it is incredibly well documented across the web. Number 9. The Pokemon War. As deep as any theory surrounding the Pokemon franchise, specifically the game series, but still pertaining to the franchise as a whole, is the Pokemon War theory. Explaining the lack of adult males within the game, the Pokemon War theory claims that Red, Blue, and Yellow versions all take place just a few years after a devastating war between Kanto and Johto. This speculation is, of course, nothing more than a fan theory that attempts to explain some of the game's more interesting plot points and character decisions. But nevertheless, it is an interesting read. Without confirmation from the studio behind the games, it is impossible to say one way or another if the rumor is true or not. But the fun behind this theory is the belief that it could be true. Number 8. Critical Hits. More casual Pokemon players would likely assume that critical hits were more or less randomized. But as it turns out, that's not necessarily the case in the original game series. Sure, there was a sense of randomization to it, but some Pokemon were more likely to achieve critical hits more often than others. In the first generation of Pokemon games, creatures with a higher speed stat were, in fact, more likely to land critical hits, and vice versa. In generations since, critical hits were no longer based on speed stats, but rather a series of in-battle stages that can be altered either by a Pokemon's moveset, select items, or abilities. As the game progressed through the years, it has become uber popular in the realm of competitive gaming and has seen years of intricate refinement. In order to balance the respective metagame, numerous changes have been implemented, generally altering the game for the better, all in the name of fair play. Number 7. Blue's Raticate. In an otherwise light-hearted children's game, Lavender Town stands alone as a rather dark setting within Pokemon lore. As a place that more or less amounts to a Pokemon graveyard, Lavender Town is home to mourning trainers and tragic stories. One story that has since garnered some conspiracy-level theories is that of the protagonist's rival. A growing rumor among fans is the fact that the rival's trainer, often referred to as Gary, seeing as how the anime character is based off of the rival trainer, had a Pokemon die, specifically his Raticate. The reasoning behind this is the fact that Gary's Raticate is mysteriously missing from the battle at Lavender Town Tower after making an appearance in previous fights as either the aforementioned Raticate or the Pokemon's previous form, Rattata. There are entire articles across the web devoted to this theory, but the consensus is generally this. Gary's Raticate is still likely alive, either traded away or back at the lab with Professor Oak. The rumor is hard to prove one way or another, but most evidence points to a relatively unharmed Raticate. Number 6. Lavender Town. Over the years, Pokemon-related stories have basically become a treasure trove for creepypasta myths. For those of you unfamiliar with creepypasta, it is essentially a website filled to the brim with urban legends, ghost stories, and spooky tall tales. But for whatever reason, The Pokemon franchise has become a massive inspiration for many writers hoping to scare their respective readers with campfire stories concerning one of their favorite childhood pastimes. At the center of countless creepypasta stories is the already surprisingly dark Lavender Town. One myth in particular that frightened the internet as a whole is the tale behind numerous reported child suicides. Taking place in 1994, aka the same year Pokemon Red and Green, as it's initially known in its home country, were released in Japan. There are several different variations of the story floating around, but generally it involves the musical theme of Lavender Town containing harmful frequencies that specifically target adolescents and, according to the legend, drove a number of children to take their own lives. While the story is, of course, fictitious, it is certainly creepy. As alluded to earlier, Pokemon is the inspiration for countless stories like this, all documented and just a few clicks away. Lavender Town is a perfect inspiration for many of these stories, considering the fact that it is already a very dark setting within an otherwise lighthearted children's game. Number 5. No Getting Stoned. As far as evolution stones are concerned, most are available for purchase in the game, but one stone in particular, the Moonstone, is only obtainable via exploration and within limited capacity. While players are able to purchase as many fire, water, and thunder stones as they want within the game, Moonstones are a bit more difficult to come by. Through a bit of maneuvering, players are able to evolve Pokemon who generally require evolution stones without these items. By utilizing a certain Pokemon, Executor, Onix, Growlithe, Psyduck, and even the mysterious glitch Missing Note. In relief, these creatures act as a catalyst for Pokemon who generally require items to advance to the next evolutionary stage. This list is by no means a guide to stoneless evolution in Generation 1 Pokemon games, but luckily numerous how-to articles and videos concerning this technique are readily available across the web. Number 4. No Munna, no problems. One rumor that has been heavily discussed by the franchise's more hardcore fans across the web is the reference of psychic Pokemon Munna in the series' first generation. For those unfamiliar with the more current generation of Pokemon, Munna did not make its debut until Pokemon Black and White, the series' 5th generation of the franchise that did not take place until over 14 years after the release of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan. Supporting this rumor is the fact that a girl outside of Rock Tunnel in Red, Blue, and Yellow makes a statement about a Pokemon that is pink with floral pattern. While this certainly describes Munna, it is still a rather vague description. This is certainly no confirmation, but for many, it is still quite the neat little Easter egg. It should also be noted that the remakes of the original games for the Game Boy Advance, Pokemon Fire Red and Pokemon Leaf Green, the girl's dialogue remains largely unchanged. Number 3. Gotta Go Fast. Anyone who has ever picked up the Japanese role-playing game is unlikely to find that the campaign can be finished in less than 1 day, much less in under an hour. But speedrunners are another breed entirely. Speedrunners are gamers who make it their mission to complete a game in as little time as possible, usually by utilizing in-game glitches and playing with somewhat unorthodox strategies. Speedruns of famous titles such as Super Mario Bros. And Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time have become popular around the web. But interestingly enough, the original series of Pokemon have caught the eyes of a handful of speedrunners. By utilizing a handful of glitches within the game's code, gamers have found that the game can actually be completed in under a half hour. Even more impressive, but perhaps less enjoyable, are speedruns of Red and Blue that take just over a minute to complete. That's right, just over 1 minute. Number 2. Safari. Some of the most difficult Pokemon to capture in the first generation of Pokemon games, Chansey, Scyther, Tauros, Kangaskhan, and Pinsir to name a few, have one trait in common: the location in which they can be found. All of the aforementioned Pokemon can only be found, at least within Red, Blue, and Yellow versions, in the Safari Zone. The main difference between the Safari Zone and the rest of the game is the fact that wild Pokemon cannot be battled before attempting to capture them. For anyone familiar with the Pokemon games, that puts the player at a major disadvantage. Within the Safari Zone, Pokemon are more likely to run away and, generally speaking, take several attempts to capture. With the ability to use the HM Fly, however, this is no longer the only way to capture these rare creatures. By utilizing the Fly technique, a player who travels from within the Safari Zone to another Kanto location, Cinnabar Island, can, by swimming up and down the coastline, encounter Safari Zone Pokemon, battle, and capture them. It should be noted, however, that this glitch was only accessible in Pokemon Red and Blue, as it was apparently fixed prior to the release of Pokemon Yellow version. Number 1. Pokemon. Did it happen? It's hard to imagine, but the games that spawned one of the biggest franchises of the past 20 years, a series that has seen a handful of worldwide phenomena since its inception, most recently with the viral mobile game Pokemon Go, almost never made it out of development. In a celebratory video released by the Pokemon Company's YouTube channel just a few months ago, the current director of Game Freak, Junichi Masuda, talked a bit about the franchise's 20th year anniversary, giving viewers a brief background of the original game's 6-year development process. According to director Masuda, these games almost did not come to fruition due to hardware malfunctions with, at the time, less reliable technology. While the original Pokemon games were far from a doomed series, it does appear that Game Freak, much like other relatively young studios, at least at that specific time, had technical issues early on. Thankfully, the team persevered, and Pokemon has gone on to achieve unprecedented success worldwide. Well, did we miss any fun factoids about Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow? Let us know in the comments below. And hey, while you're here, why not hit the subscribe button and share this video with your friends?